Thank you for checking out Lakehead International's videos. You're about to watch one of our Lakehead International live webinars, a fun and informative way to learn more about Lakehead while also meeting faculty, staff, and current students. If you have any questions throughout today's video, please comment below. Otherwise, let's get started. Hello everyone and welcome to another Lakehead International Live. My name is Jordan Ball. I'll be your host today. First and foremost, I want to take this opportunity and say thank you to our audience for joining us. Whether this is perhaps your first live event that you're participating in or one of many that you've joined before, we're excited to have you here today, and we're certainly excited to share more information about applying for your student visa here at Lakehead University. I'm joined by a few special guests who I'll introduce in just a moment, but I'll perhaps maybe say hello from myself first. My name is Jordan Ball. I'm the International New and Social Media Officer. I help run our live events, our digital experiences, as well as our social media channels. It's a pleasure to be here today, but I'll next pass it over to Sarah to introduce herself.
Thanks, Jordan. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm so glad that you could join us today. My name is Sarah Melvin. I am one of the International Student Advisors. I'm also a RISIA, which means a Regulated International Student Immigration Advisor. We've got a lot of great information here for you today. I'm excited that you have chosen Lakehead, and we really look forward to welcoming you on campus at some point soon. And I'll pass it off to my colleague, Jintu.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, everyone. My name is Jindu Thompson, and I am one of the International Student Advisors and a Regulated Canadian Immigration Consultant, or RCIC. We all are located on the beautiful Thunder Bay campus. It's nice and snowy outside this morning. So like Sarah said, we have a great team here for you. We have 4 advisors here at the Thunder Bay campus, and we have 1 advisor in the Aurelia campus. So together with our team, we will be here for you from the beginning of your journey until your graduation day. I'll be here covering the slides along with Sarah and Jordan. So if you have any questions, please feel free to send that to us, and we'll be answering them soon. So thanks for joining us today, and I hope to see you on campus really soon. I'll pass it back to Jordan.
So what's on our agenda today? First, I'll chat a bit about what is the Canadian study permit and perhaps why would you need one. Then we'll chat a bit about your status of your Lakehead application. And then I'll pass it over to my colleagues to share more information about your next steps, including discussions related to letters of acceptance, biometrics, medical exams, cooperative education, employment in Canada, processing times, accompanying family members. And then everyone's favorite time of the webinar, we will wrap things up with our live question and answer period where we will venture to answer as many questions as possible. So if you have some now, you're more than welcome to start putting them in the Q&A. We're going to start answering them behind the scenes by text. And then if you do prefer to hear it live or actually hear us talk about it, you can save it for the end, but I can't guarantee we'll have time to answer everything. So that's why I have that little caveat there. In terms of upcoming events, I want to remind you there's some exciting events still upcoming, of course. Later this month, we have Discover Natural Resources Management. We have several admissions and application sessions coming up over the next 2 months. And then we're also meeting with the Faculty of Education. This is just a quick preview over the next few weeks. But if you want to check out our full schedule of events, you can scan the QR code on your screen or visit lakeheadu.ca/international-live. Both of those will bring you right to our landing page where you can see those upcoming events and, more importantly, register and save your seat. Alrighty, so it's time to begin, folks. What is a study permit? So the study permit is actually a document that the Canadian government issues that allows foreign nationals to study at designated learning institutions, or DLIs, you'll hear us call it, here in Canada. Most foreign nationals do need a study permit to actually study in Canada. Lakehead University's DLI number is listed on the screen. You don't need to save that. It's publicly listed and available on IRCC's website. But I just wanted to help you better understand that we are a designated learning institution here in Canada. And most importantly, you should apply before you travel to Canada. And so you may be asking yourself, well, if I have to apply before I come to Canada, when should I start the process? Before we actually dive into that, of course, there is a small group of students that perhaps are already in Canada, and I'm going to pass it over to Jintu to speak a little more about that.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. So if you're already inside Canada, you can apply for a new study permit or a study permit extension. But because you're inside Canada, the study permit extension and the new study permit process is exactly the same. You'll be using the exact same application form, but you will need the letter of acceptance from Lakehead University, and you may need a PAL as well. If you're a visitor in Canada, for example, you came to Canada and you got an ETA or a visitor visa when you enter Canada or a visitor record. In that case, and you decide that you want to go to school and get a study permit, you can apply for a study permit while you're inside Canada, but the application you'll be submitting will be an outside Canada application. You have to follow all the steps that you will need to apply as if you're an outside Canada applicant. But the only difference is, or the main difference is, you're going to provide your current mailing address and you're going to state that you're inside Canada right now. Or sometimes students are here inside Canada taking a prerequisite course for their admission. These students are eligible to apply for a inside Canada study permit application. Only some people are eligible to apply for a study permit application from inside of Canada. That is why I said if you're a visitor inside Canada, just visiting, then you may not be eligible to apply for an inside Canada application. You will have to submit an application as if you're outside Canada. But if you're studying inside Canada as a prerequisite to a program or something like that, you could be eligible to apply for an inside Canada application. Or if you have a spouse or common law partner or parent on a study or work permit, you're eligible to apply for an inside Canada application. And there's few criteria you had to follow for that. But other than that, almost everybody needs to submit this application as if you're from outside Canada. If you're a worker in Canada, then you can change your status to a student. In that case, you'll be eligible. If you have a valid work permit, you'll be eligible to submit the Inside Canada application. Then you'll be changing your status to a student. The thing is, if you have a valid work permit and then you receive the study permit, you're eligible to hold two permits at the same time. That's even better. So I'll pass it back to Jordan.
Thank you, Gentoo. So back on the idea of when should I start the process, there's actually a few things that you may need to take into consideration before you can even start the process. And first and foremost, it's going to be where does your current application stand at Lakehead University? So right now we're looking at the undergraduate applications status screen. So when to apply essentially is the question. If your status is incomplete, pending, or refused, we're going to ask you to hold off on submitting that application for a study permit and perhaps prepare your documents. So if you're in those statuses right now, you're more than welcome to stay on our webinar today, learn about what documents you're going to be required to gather and perhaps what will help make sure the process is fairly smooth. But if you are admitted conditionally, admitted or eligible to register, well, that's great news because you're going to be able to proceed to the application at this point. I will note, and there is essentially a built-in pause now, when you're admitted, so you have a letter of acceptance to Lakehead University, you do need to take into consideration whether or not you're going to require something called the provincial attestation letter. So post-secondary international students must provide that PAL letter from a province or a territory with their study permit application now. So IRCC, or Immigration, Refugee, Citizenship Canada, will return any applications that are received that do not include a PAL unless otherwise exempt. So a vast majority of students joining us for this upcoming year, 2025, will require that PAL letter. At this time, Lakehead University is not issuing PAL letters for 2025. No Ontario University is. So please be patient as we continue to work through those processes. If you're a grad student, let's take a peek at your statuses. So there's a few more here: application stage, additional information, initial review, department review, or refused committee decision. In those 5 cases, we're going to ask you to once again hold off and prepare your documents. Only when you've been admitted in a graduate program is the time that you could proceed with your study permit application. Once again, and perhaps new for some viewers, if you weren't aware, master's and PhD or doctoral students will now require a provincial attestation letter as a part of their study permit application. So we'll keep that in mind, and let's take a peek now at what it actually means to get a study, or pardon me, a PAL. So there's 5 steps essentially to receiving a PAL. Number one, and most important, if you have an offer to Lakehead University, you can do this even now, but you can accept that offer. So for all those students that have been admitted, congratulations, of course, but now the next step for you is to accept your offer. And for those viewers that are perhaps still waiting for a response from our admissions team, as soon as you get that letter of acceptance, we want you to proceed with accepting your offer. The good thing is that when we are prepared to open PAL's application here at Lakehead University, you will already be one step ahead. You'll be complete step number one, and we'll be able to perhaps invite you to complete the short PAL request form. For those students that are then approved, they'll actually be invited to pay the confirmation deposits. After they pay the deposits and we verify Lakehead has received that money, we will then issue the PAL on behalf of Lakehead University or on behalf of the provincial government, really. And then you can proceed with applying for your study permit. I'll remind our viewers here, take note of the link at the bottom of your screen, lakeheadu.ca/international-PAL. That is our webpage. Right now, it has as much information as we're able to share. But we will be updating it as soon as we have more information. And rest assured, if you're a current applicant who has an offer to Lakehead University, you are already on our mailing list. We will 100% be communicating with you as soon as we have more details about what it is to get a PAL. So that's a quick overview of PALs. I know that I wish I could share more information, but it is anticipated to be announced very soon. So stay tuned for that. And like I said, we'll be happy to share more information with all admitted students as soon as we can. But let's take an opportunity to celebrate for everyone that has received an acceptance to Lakehead. So congratulations. It's quite a journey to get where you are today. But we're certainly thrilled to have you perhaps joining the Lakehead family one day. And once again, it's something you should be celebrating. I am going to take a pause here and shift gears. I always like to hear a bit about where the audience is from or what they're pursuing. So let's first pose the question, what level of study are you pursuing? Are you going to be joining us for an undergrad program, a grad program, perhaps an academic English program, or English as a second language as we refer to it on the poll? Or perhaps it's not applicable. Maybe you're a parent or a guardian, or you're one of our agent partners or even our partner universities checking out today's call. We'll give everyone about 30 seconds to complete that. But in the meantime, perhaps I'll pass over to Jintu to kick it off with next steps, and then I'll come back after this first slide to share the results.
Well, thank you, Jordan. All right, so we'll talk about the next steps. You'll be applying online from your country of residence. You will need your letter of acceptance and the provincial attestation letter, like Jordan explained before. You will need these 2 documents from the university to start your application or to submit the application to IRCC. So we are talking about all applicants from outside of Canada. You will be applying from your current country of residence, and the applications are submitted online on the IRCC website unless you're physically unable to do so. So first, you need to make yourself an IRCC account. Then you will need to start gathering your documents. We'll go over what documents you will need to upload to the IRCC portal for your study permit in the next few slides. And last but not least, we'll discuss entry requirements once your visa is approved and when you're ready to travel to Canada.
Great, I'll jump back in here. It looks like we have a dominance from our grad students. We have about 75% of you on today's webinar, but we still have undergrad. And with that being said, I always like to remind viewers, rest assured, we'll cover all things. So whether you're an undergrad, a grad, an English language student, we are certainly going to share more details for you so that we can cover all of our bases. But with that being said, there's going to be a poll later on in today's presentation, but now it's time to really kick it off and pass it back to Jintu.
Thanks, Jordan. So to apply online from outside of Canada, you need to make sure you have everything you need. You need a camera or a scanner to make electronic copies of your documents. You can simply use your phone to take clear photos, but just make sure they're clear and there's no glare on it, or you can scan them. IRCC will accept the JPEG, PNG, Word, PDF copies of your documents, but you want to make sure your file size must be less than 4 MB to upload to the portal. You may need to resize some files before you upload them or compress them before you upload them, and that's totally okay to do that. Supporting documents that are not in English or French must be translated by a certified translator. That is really important because if you don't do that and you submit the documents in some another language other than English or French, then that will only delay your application further because IRCC will reach out to you for another copy of the document, and that will take time. So you don't want to do that. So make sure you have all the documents ready and in English or French before you upload them. You can review the instruction guide available online to start your application. So you'll be just going to the online tool that is available. When you click on it, like when you click on apply to come to Canada or apply for the study permit from outside of Canada, you're going to click on the outside Canada option, then you're going to continue on. So that will give you a better idea of what documents you will need, the guide you will need, etc. So then you're going to prepare your answers on the online tool. Once you create the account through the IRCC portal, it will ask a series of questions to determine what type of visa you require. These are documents you need for each country. So once you answer these questions, you will have a list of documents that you need to submit for your study permit application. Again, these documents are particular to your visa office. So if you know somebody, for example, applying from India and you are in China, the documents required is probably most likely two different things. So just keep that in mind as you're going through this process. We can share the IRCC website link in the chat for the local visa office requirements in a little bit. You will also need a valid credit card or a debit card to pay for the IRCC application fees online. The card doesn't have to be in your name. It could be your parents' card or your friend's card, but just make sure you have all the card details to make the payment online. A study permit application costs $150, and if you have never applied to come to Canada before, the chances are you will need to pay for a biometrics as well. The biometrics fees is $85 per person, and the biometrics are your fingerprints and your photo. If you have any dependents applying together, there will be additional fees for the application. So the dependents means your spouse or your children under 22 years of old age, I should say. So if they're applying together, then you will have to pay more fees for them as well while you submitting this application. So once you have all the information ready, you'll be creating an account on the IRCC website, and then we'll talk about that in the next slide. So if this is your first time using the IRCC portal, you'll be asked to provide an email. You can click on get an invite code to create an account. You will see that on the website. So just click on that, get an invite code tab, and then you're going to provide your email, and then you will receive this code in the email. Once you receive this code, you're ready to create an account. So, like I said, once you receive this code, you can proceed to sign up for the account. When you use UC to sign into an account or to create a new one, you will receive a prompt to register a device, or you need to provide your email address for two-factor authentication. You will need a Google Authenticator app on your phone or on your computer, or you can simply use your email as well. Most of our students prefer to use email rather than downloading the app on the phone. So that's totally up to you how you want to do this. You will also want to make sure you save your recovery codes when setting up your account, because it will ask you to agree to that, and it will ask you to check that off to make sure you have the recovery codes printed or you save them. So just make sure you take a PDF copy of that or a screenshot of that, because the chances are you will need that in the future. So to create your own GC key, you can click on the sign up button on the far right-hand side, as you can see on the screen here. Please make sure you make a note of your username and password and all your security questions and answers. So once you enter the security question and answers, just make sure you take a screenshot of them as well, because the chances are once you're here in Canada, you'll be going into GCKey to extend the permits or apply for new permits. So make sure you keep a note of that. And then you'll be using the same account for your post-graduation work permit or your visas. That's why I'm saying it's really important you keep a note of all these questions and answers and the login information. And then on the next slide, we will talk about the documents. Okay, so we'll go over the documents you need to get you started and explain them further in the next few slides. Your letter of acceptance or your offer letter from the university is your proof of admission. You do not need another letter or enrollment verification letter or anything like that, especially if you're applying for the study permit for the first time. You will also need a proof of financial support or funds. You will need a proof of identity. In this case, that could be your passport, and in almost all cases, that is your passport. You will also need the provincial attestation letter, and I know Jordan explained how to obtain that previously, so that's great. If your application was accepted for processing and then it was later refused, just make sure you obtain a new PAL before you apply again. That's really important. In the unfortunate scenario that IRCC refused your application, you will need to get another PAL from the university before you can apply for the study permit again. And there will be also some country-specific documents that you will need to have for your application as well, and we'll cover that in the next few slides. Okay, so we will start with the letter of acceptance. So as Jordan mentioned, it is either sent to you from the Graduate Studies Admissions Office or you download it through in your MyInfo account. You cannot submit a study visa application without this document, because the reason I'm saying that is because sometimes students reach out to us and say they're ready to start their application, but they haven't even received the offer letter yet. So you want to make sure you obtain this letter first before you can even proceed with the application. Your offer letter will include your information, including the program details, the length of your program, etc. This is what you need, or the officer will need to assess your application, along with all other documents. If you have any questions about the admission process or the letter of acceptance, you will want to reach out directly to our admissions team. You can note down the contact information for undergraduate admissions and graduate studies down on the screen for you. So just make sure you directly connect with them if you have any questions about the documents, the pending documents or your offer letter, so you're not sure about the conditions or how to meet those conditions. Reach out directly to them and they'll be happy to support you. So another important document you will need for your visa application is your proof of financial support. You must satisfy the IRCC officer that you have enough funds for your studies and your stay in Canada. You will need to show that you have a minimum of $20,635 in addition to your first year of tuition and travel costs. There will be additional funds requirement if you have your family members accompanying you to Canada. You can find the estimated tuition fees using our cost estimated tool on our website. Our undergraduate students typically have 2 semesters in a year, and graduate students have 3 semesters per academic year. But just make sure you're providing not just the minimum amount needed for these applications. The chances are if you just provide the minimum amount, for example, $20,635 for the living expenses and just 1 year of tuition, the chances are your application will not be successful, because IRCC is looking for you to provide sufficient documents and prove it to them that you got enough funds to stay in Canada for your entire stay. Although they're basically asking for that 1 year of tuition and $20,635 for the living expense, you are required to provide more than that, just so you can convince the officer that you got enough funds for your entire stay in Canada. So you can provide the financial support proof in various methods. So just make sure you are providing enough proof that you can support yourself in Canada and the family members accompanying you to Canada. You can include your tuition fee receipt. You can include your PAL deposit and any down payment you made for the residence. You can include all those things with your application. You can also log into your MyInfo and download the current statement of account. It will have all the list of payments you paid to the university so far, so you can include that with your application. Or you can prove your funds with a guaranteed investment certificate. It is not a requirement, but it is an option for you if you want to do that way. So you can open a GIC from a Canadian bank or proof of a student or education loan from your bank in your home country, and then along with any tuition fee receipts, like I said earlier. If you have a sponsor, you must provide a letter from your sponsor confirming the sponsorship and also provide supporting documentation for proof of financial support. The letter in itself is not sufficient. You will have to provide their bank statements, maybe their employment details. You will have to provide all these documents to the officer so they can determine you got enough funds to support yourself in Canada. If your parents are paying for your tuition, you can provide their income details through the bank statements. Sometimes you will need to provide like up to 6 months bank statement or 3 months, depending on the country you're applying from. So just make sure you kind of review the document checklist properly for that. But sometimes students have scholarship. That's even great, right? So you can provide the scholarship letter with that application. Or if you're participating in a funded program, you must provide documentation confirming your funding with your application. If your funds are from multiple sources, because I just told you can do the proof of funds through various methods. But if your funds are from multiple sources, we recommend you include the information in the statement of purpose. Almost all the time, the statement of purpose or letter of intent is one of the requirements for your study permit application. So you can list them out, your source of funding in that particular document, or you can create a separate cover page for the proof of funds and explain where your funds are coming from clearly and merge all the documents, all the financial documents together before uploading it to the IRCC portal. Just so you're kind of like putting everything together for the officers so they understand where your funds are coming from, and then you provide the supporting documents so so everything is clearly laid out for them. Okay, so we will explain further about the proof of identity requirement for the study permit or the study visa application now. So you need your proof of identity, which is your passport, like I said, in almost all cases. Please make sure your passport is not expiring soon. It should be valid for more than 6 months and ideally a few years until you complete your studies in Canada. You should check your passport validity before you apply for your study permit, because especially if it's not valid or if you feel like it's expiring in the next, say, 6 months or a year, I would recommend you connect with your embassy or connect with your visa processing center locally for your country, and then renew your passport as soon as you can, because the study permit will not be issued beyond the validity of your passport. So if your passport is expiring within the next 2 years, renew it first before you proceed with the application. If your passport expires while you're studying inside Canada, you can renew the passport through the embassy or High Commission office in Canada. And then if you're ever in that position that your passport is expiring soon, once you're here in Canada, you can reach out to our team and we can provide you with guidance as well. So Jordan, would you like to talk about this?
For sure, yeah. So, of course, as we've discussed today, and I know it's a popular question right now in the Q&A, provincial attestation letters are going to be an important factor of consideration for many of you. So if approved, Lakehead University will provide students with a PAL after they've completed the PAL request form and paid their $5,000 PAL deposit. Students must complete the steps prior to all of this to accept their offer of admission from Lakehead University before they're invited to request a PAL. Keep in mind, though, I want to make this crystal clear to everyone on today's webinar, payments made in advance will not influence whether or not we're able to issue a PAL. So I recognize that some students on today's webinar don't have an offer yet, perhaps, and haven't sent Lakehead any money, and that's how it should be if you don't have an offer. In other cases, students that perhaps received offers a couple months ago or even within the last few weeks, you may have been invited to make a payment of $500 or $2,000 to confirm your seat in your program. Those students who have already made those initial payments will be invited to make top-up payments as a part of the PAL process. But with that being said, once again, any payments made in advance will not influence your ability to receive a PAL. So please wait until you've completed the PAL request form when invited to do so. And then if approved or when approved, at that point, that's when we'll encourage you to make those final payments or initial payments to then secure your PAL from Lakehead University. So I hope that helps, and I will answer sort of the general question as much as I wish as I could give a specific timeline or even a date. Everyone's question right now is, when can I get my PAL? When can I get my PAL? At this point, the provincial government or the government of Ontario has not shared their allocations or the number of PALs with with Ontario institutions. So they have their full number right now, and the province is working out the final details to see how many individual PALs Lakehead University, for example, will receive. Until we know that number, we're not able to issue PALs or work with the province to request PALs on your behalf. So have patience with us and rest assured, as soon as we know more information, our admitted applicants will be the second people to know, as we are really excited to get the process started and start inviting students to receive their PALs and then join us at Lakehead down the road. I'll pass back to Jintu for the final next steps in terms of gathering documents.
Thanks, Jordan. Sarah will touch on the country-specific documents and carry on from here. But thanks so much for explaining the PAL document process, because we get a lot of students asking questions about this process. So what I want to say is, please make sure you check your email often, so that way you don't miss this, right? So you want to make sure you check your email and follow the steps as soon as you receive that email. Please don't delay it, because the more you delay, the more time it's going to take for you to submit this application. And I'll pass it back to Sarah. Thank you.
Thanks, Jintu, for all that information. Okay, a few more slides for everyone. I know it's a lot of information, but hang in there. And I know that Jordan will provide a copy of these slides for everyone to review afterwards. So, country-specific documents, applications outside of Canada are assessed by the visa offices. So each country has their own requirements, in addition to the documents that Jintu explained about earlier. On the IRCC website, you can find the application package that's specific to your country. So from the drop-down menu, you will select where are you applying from, outside of Canada, and then select your country of residence. After this, you'll get a document like you see on the screen. You will have the document checklist and the visa office instructions guide, and this can be downloaded. So it's important for you to review this carefully, as it's slightly different for every country. So now we're going to talk about some entry requirements. So with your study permit application, if you are from a visa required country, you will get your temporary resident visa. So the counterfoil, the sticker in your passport. So you will receive a passport request. They also call this a PPR, to submit your passport for visa stamping. So you have 30 days from receiving this letter to submit your passport for stamping. Your visa is the travel document, which you need to enter Canada. So this is important to differentiate, which is sometimes confusing. Your visa and or your ETA is your entry document. So this is what allows you to come in and out of the country. Your study permit is your status document. So you get that at the port of entry when you come in, and that's what allows you to stay in Canada for more than 6 months. So that's the difference between them. And of course, if you're from a visa exempt country, you may need an ETA, so an electronic travel authorization. The ETA is usually valid until the expiry of your passport. And if IRCC approves your study permit application, they will issue you the electronic travel authorization automatically. You don't need to apply for this in most cases. Okay, a little bit on biometrics. So IRCC is collecting biometrics for almost all applications at this point. You'll pay the biometrics fee with your application, and they will send you a biometric instruction letter. Please ensure that you follow the steps on the letter and visit the VAT closest to you for collection. And remember, every time they send these type of requests, there's usually always deadlines attached to them. So it's really important to pay attention to your account when you have things in process and make sure that you're acting on these requests in a timely manner. Okay, let's shift to medical exams. A medical exam could also be required depending on your country of citizenship and your program of study. If you're going to study or work in the healthcare field or childcare, or anyone in the vulnerable person sector, we recommend that you complete the medical prior to coming to Canada, and then include this with your study permit application. Medicals can be done in advance if you know that they're going to be required. You just need to be sure that the medical is done by an IRCC panel physician, and a list can be found on their website to find one that's closest to you. Again, be sure to follow the instructions in the medical request letter to complete the requirements before the deadline, which for this is usually 30 days. Okay, so a little bit about co-op work permits. So co-ops are work integrated learning that may be part of your degree studies, and for some might even be a mandatory component of your program. So co-op positions are usually approved after you complete your first year or first 2 semesters, depending on your program. Our department holds workshops on campus. We do these over Zoom, and this assists students that need to apply for their co-op work permit. And of course, we can also schedule one-on-one meetings with our students to help support you through this application. Sometimes you can include this in your initial study visa application and can get them at the port of entry when you come in, but please don't panic if that doesn't happen. We can support you with applying for this after you arrive in Canada. Okay, so a little bit about working in Canada. So as an international student, if you're registered with the institution full-time, very important, full-time, and you have the working conditions on your study permit, you'll be able to work part-time while you study. This part-time work can help offset some of the costs associated with rent or food. Please note this part-time work really won't be able to support your full tuition fees, so please plan accordingly to have those finances already in place. We have a great career services center that can assist you after you arrive. They can review your resumes and cover letters and help you with job searching. So if you're looking for off-campus employment, you can work 24 hours a week off campus and full-time on official breaks. And then you can work on-campus jobs as well with unlimited hours. So it's great to be able to work a little bit while you study. The other work in Canada is, of course, after you graduate. So most of our students choose to stay in Canada after graduation, and providing you've met the criteria, you'll be eligible for the postgraduate work permit program. So for our undergraduate students, as long as you're in a program that's at least 2 years in length, you'll be eligible for a 3-year work permit. For our graduate students, so that's our master's and PhD, As long as your program is at least 8 months in length or more, you will be eligible for the 3-year work permit as PGWP as well. Okay, so the question on everyone's mind, how long will it take to get my study permit? So you can track your application through your IRCC account, of course, and processing times are going to vary depending on your country. You can see we have an example on the screen from Ghana. It's taking 7 weeks, and this fluctuates continuously. IRCC will send you notifications anytime they make a change in your account. And you can check the current processing times, as we said, on the IRCC website. But we always encourage everyone, please apply early to avoid delays. This is, a general processing time, but depending on your situation, it can, take longer. So please apply early. Okay, so application decisions. So at some point, hopefully your application is going to be approved and you will be requested to send in your passport for stamping, as I said earlier. Again, it's really important to log into your GCKey account frequently and follow the instructions anytime you get a request. And so once your application is approved, you'll send your visa in. And this is sort of the final step in this application process. So this is an exciting time for many of our applicants. And then once you get your visa stamping and your passport back, you can continue on the next steps of making your plans to come to Canada and to Lakehead. In the instance that you do get a visa refusal, it's really important to review the refusal reasons carefully. If you choose to reapply, you need to ensure that you clearly address those refusal points and include that additional information or documentation in your new application, and ensure that you're addressing them to satisfy the officer of what was in the original refusal. And you may also want to ask for reconsideration, and this is done through an IRCC web form. So it just depends on your individual situation. And as Jinju said, please note if you do need to reapply, you will also need to request a new PAL. Okay, so we also wanted to touch on dependents. Some of our students here might be wanting to bring spouses or children with you. And so you can do this. And when referring to spousal open work permits, only students in master's or PhD programs or professional degree granting programs will be able to apply for their spouses to have an open work permit if they wish to do so. If you're an undergraduate program, the spousal open work permit option is no longer available to you, with the exception of some very few programs. You can also apply to have your children come to Canada with you, either as a visitor or if they are of school age as a student. If they are of school age, particularly going into high school, you should be applying for a study permit for them. And you can include your family members in your original application to come to Canada. So that's something that you might want to consider. But you can also invite them to come with you after your arrival. So once you get here, you can always submit your application to have your family members come at a point after you arrive. Okay, so I think I'm going to pass it back to Jordan to talk a little bit about post-graduation plans.
Thank you so much. Alrighty, folks, it is the final poll for today. We're curious to know post-graduation plans. What are your extended plans upon graduation? I know for some of you that could be perhaps 2, 3, 4, 5, even 6 years down the road. So that's okay if you don't know. I always like to say that if somebody asked me this question as I was about to start my journey at Lakehead many years ago, I would have been in the undecided category by a long shot. I would have looked at them with 10 heads and said, "What do you mean? Let me get me through the program first." But many of you, of course, aspire for working and living in Canada, perhaps furthering your studies, returning home, maybe traveling or working abroad. You could be undecided though, and it also may not be applicable. So we'll hear from you to get more information about what your plans after graduation are. In the meantime, though, while we let questions, or pardon me, while we let responses roll in, we've answered over 50 questions in the Q&A so far. And I'll take this opportunity to remind all of our viewers, perhaps maybe some of you have joined late, but there's two different features on Zoom here that we're using. There's the Zoom chat, where we certainly encourage students to say hello to each other, to connect with each other, make friends with each other. But there's also something called the Q&A. So the Zoom Q&A is where we ask all questions be submitted. Because this chat moves so quickly sometimes, we lose questions, and we don't want to lose your question. We want to be able to answer you today. So please submit all questions using the Q&A. We have about 15 minutes left on today's webinar, so we'll do our very best to answer as many as possible. But I'm going to wrap up this poll and share those results for those that are curious. It looks like almost 60% of you would like to work and live in Canada. So that's exciting, because we certainly love to have our students stick back with us and stay in our hometowns, especially. But beyond that, we love to also see our students take their Lakehead degree and go beyond our cities and do incredible things with it. So that's certainly exciting. Some of you want to return home, others want to further studies, and there's three of you so far that are undecided. You're in the same boat as me, but thank you again to everyone for participating in our polls today. Let me dive into one of the first questions I have marked here, and then I'll pass it over to my colleagues. It says, when I'm applying for my student visa, do I start with the PAL payment to be able to do that for my student study visa? So essentially, right now, we're looking at a situation where a vast majority of international students or foreign nationals will be required to have a PAL in order to apply for their study permit. So with that being said, in order to receive a PAL, Lakehead University will require a deposit. With that being said, we are not yet processing PALs for the May or September 2025 intakes. So have patience with us. There's no Ontario institutions that are processing those PALs right now. So no schools in Ontario are issuing PALs for those upcoming intakes. So rest assured, as soon as we get our final numbers from the provincial government, we're going to work as quickly as we can to then communicate directly with our applicants about what your next steps are. So like I said, if you are admitted, you will receive the information as soon as we have it. In the meantime, though, have patience with us. And I will also remind viewers once again that any advance payments will not influence PALs in terms of receiving one or not receiving one. You will need to be invited to make that payment. So please hold off on any payments related to the PALs at this time. If you've already received a letter of acceptance from Lakehead University and you were invited to pay your confirmation deposit of either 500 or 2,000, you may proceed that in that process, and you certainly should accept your offer, as that is step one of the PAL process, is accepting your offer. But until the time that we're prepared to invite you to the PALs process, please hold off on any other payments. Jintu, I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. There was a question about PAL for family members. I just want to clarify the PAL, the provisional attestation letter, that is for students, for study permits. If you have family members applying together with you, they do not need a provincial attestation letter. You are the only one who's required to obtain that letter. So that is issued by the university, or I mean from the government, but issued to you by the university, like Jordan explained. You will need that letter to apply for your study permit purposes, but your family, they do not need a PAL. Just make sure you follow the other document requirements for your family and you'll be okay. Thanks.
I'll jump in here and I'll add to that, Jin, too. Somebody explained it to me essentially like this. The PAL letter, to simplify it, although it is not simple, it is fairly complicated. It is a unique token, or it's a unique access code to then be able to submit that study permit application. So it gives you access to be able to submit. But like Jintu said, once you're submitting, if you would like to add your spouse or your partner, your children, your dependents, that is certainly allowed, and you would not require additional PALs. So thank you for clarifying, Jintu. This next question I have marked live. It says, So can I apply to Lakehead and wait for PAL? Absolutely, yeah. So if you have not submitted an application to Lakehead, now is the time to do so, especially for those students that are applying to one of our master's or doctoral programs. Applications for fall 2025 or September 2025 do close on February 1. So that is Saturday, February 1, in a little over 1 week from today. Those applications will close if the programs are filled. And oftentimes we do see those applications closing right on that very day. So please keep in mind that you should absolutely submit those applications before then if you're committed to coming this fall. With that being said, once you've applied to Lakehead, only students that have been admitted to Lakehead University, so they actually have received an offer to join one of our programs, those students would then be invited to start the PAL process, which includes first and foremost the PAL request form. So you'll receive access to that PAL request form. And then beyond that, if approved or when approved, you will then be required to make the PAL deposit payment. Like I said before, any payments made in advance will not influence whether or not you will be selected for a PAL. Gentoo, I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, thank you. So there's a question about if you do not receive a PAL, can they still apply for a study permit without it? Unfortunately, no, unless you qualify for one of those exemptions. But in almost all cases, you will need a PAL to apply for your study permit. Without the PAL, without the letter of or the offer letter from the university, your application will not be processed. It will be sent back to you or it will be refused. So make sure you have your all the documents required before you submit that application. It's really, really important you do that because IRCC may not reach out to you and say, hey, you're missing a document. There you go, you can submit it now. They won't say that. Most likely that will be a refusal if you do not submit the required documents with the application. So please do not go ahead and submit a study permit application without a PAL, especially if you're one of those students who needs a PAL for the study permit application.
Thank you, Gentoo. This next question says, my program begins from September 2025. I want to make a payment for 2 terms before submitting the visa application. I think I should pay according to the fees mentioned in my offer letter, right? So that's a great question. I will have a pause here and say to our audience, as we noted, as a part of the financial support section, you are welcome to make payments to Lakehead University or towards your student fees and use that as proof of financial support or means of financial support to study here in Canada and more specifically at Lakehead University. Although I will also note it's not required. It is simply not required. So if you have the money in a bank account versus already paid to Lakehead, it should make no difference. However, if you feel that's going to help your case, or if you have that as your preferred approach, you're more than welcome to use your offer letter as an indication on what your fees will be. As per the schedule, though, fees for 2025-2026 will typically be released at the end of May. So May 2025, we should receive more information about what the fees are for next year. I always like to remind students, typically you can look at what are the fees for the current year, and you can add a nominal increase to that for a year-over-year change. And that should give you a better understanding of what it will cost for your first year of studies here at Lakehead University. So Gentoo, over to you.
Thank you, Jordan. There was a question about the PAL and this student is applying for a master's program. So they're asking, do they need a PAL because they're applying for the master's program? Yes, master's students or graduate students, you will need a PAL with your application for IRCC to process your application. So you will require to obtain the PAL before you submit that application. There are some cases that you don't need a PAL, and then if you qualify for one of those if you qualify for one of those exceptions, you do not need a PAL. I put the link in the chat for you. It says who doesn't need a PAL. I would recommend you review that. And then if you are one of those cases applicable to you, you don't need a PAL. But every other student, especially the students like yourself who's applying for a master's program, you will need a PAL with your application.
Thank you, Jintu. This next question is one I actually really like. It says, "What things could cause me for not getting Pal?" So although we don't have all the answers yet, there's some pretty straightforward ones. The first one is that for those students that have an offer to Lakehead but have not accepted their offer, you won't be invited to complete the Pal request form. You must accept that offer of admission. So whether or not you've been admitted to an undergrad program or a grad program, accepting your offer is available already on your portals. So if you currently have that offer, perhaps you might want to end this webinar and go over there and accept your offer. And for those students that don't quite yet have an offer from Lakehead, have patience with our admissions team as they work through those processes and finalize offers going out. We still have many, many months of offers to continue to flow, so have patience with them. As soon as you receive a letter of acceptance, though, you're going to want to accept that. That's step number one. Other things that could cause you from not getting a PAL. As a part of the process, each stage of the process typically has a time frame or a window of time that you must complete that step. So perhaps you might receive an email that tells you you need to do this next step in the next 5 business days. If you miss that window, if you take 7 business days, if you take 10 business days, or you just don't respond at that point, we will take that as a consideration that you are no longer interested in a PAL, and we will move on to the next student. So again, deadlines are critical as a part of this process, and missing those deadlines will perhaps jeopardize your ability to receive a PAL from Lakehead University. Aside from that, more news to come, hopefully, and we're certainly excited to share as soon as we can. To be transparent, we don't yet have our numbers from the provincial government. We're not sitting on them. We're not waiting. We're not causing any delays for our audience or our students. As much as we wish we could have the PALs ready to go, we just don't quite have them from the provincial government. But rest assured, as I've noted before, as soon as we do receive them, our teams over here in Lakehead International and our counterparts in undergraduate and graduate admissions are prepared to move quickly on this. So have patience with us as we continue to wait it out with you. This question says, if you pay for PAL and they refuse your student visa, will the payment made be switched to the new PAL, or do you pay it again? So if you have been refused from a previous intake, so last year, if you were invited to make a PAL payment, and then you received a refusal letter from IRCC, your payments will be carried forward to this year, and you will be up for consideration for a new PAL. For those students, and I've seen this question come up quite a few times, if you make that deposit payment or if you make any deposit payment related to admissions or PALs here at Lakehead University, if your study permit is refused, you can actually show or provide proof of that refusal, and we'll be able to consider it for a refund. Otherwise, all deposit payments are non-refundable. Does PAL Will PAL be approved for all accepted students? At this point, we don't quite know what our numbers or how many PALs we will receive. We're hopeful, of course, that we'll be able to share a PAL letter with each and every one of our applicants. With that being said, though, it's too early to say. And so please have patience with us as well as we wait to confirm those final details. And then, like I said before, many, many times, as soon as we know more information, we'll be communicating with our accepted or admitted applicants. Alrighty, folks, so it is coming to 10 o'clock, so I'll take this opportunity to start to wind down. If you submit any final questions, we'll do our best to answer them by text. If we don't get to you, though, please send us an email over at welcome. I'll send that right now in the chat just so everyone has access to it. welcome@lakeheadu.ca is our main email here in international enrollment. You can connect with us there. In the meantime, follow us, stay connected. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Lakehead International. With that being said, it looks like we are out of time, and I want to thank everyone for joining us, whether you're a student, whether you're a parent or a guardian, whether you're an agent partner, and also to our guests, Jintu and Sarah and Paula behind the scenes. Thank you for supporting today's webinar. Couldn't do it without you. On that note, though, thanks and bye for now. Hopefully, we'll see you at the next event.
I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, I want to encourage you to comment below or connect with us on social media. We can be found at Lakehead International on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Thanks for watching once again, and hopefully we'll see you at the next live webinar. Bye for now.